many of you may know who have been there or have connection to Hawaii, that we always give the greeting. I say it, and then you say it back to me, of aloha. Aloha. And aloha means hello. It also means goodbye, but it's a more meaningful, basically it means unconditional love that we share between each other. So when I'm in Hawaii, I usually like to start with introduce them on how to do a big howdy, y'all. But I thought I would try aloha with you. I also wanted to take from a Hawaii tradition of storytelling. So if you've seen the hula, that actually hula was the way that the Hawaiians passed down history. It was the stories of their ancestors because they didn't write it down. They told the story of where they came from and things that were meaningful to them. So I did consider a hula lesson for us, but since we've all just eaten, maybe I'll just share that tradition of really, I'd like to share part of my story with you. And I think it fits with the story of silver service a little bit, and maybe you'll find some connections to your own stories, your own life stories. But first I wanted to get a sense. Sherry was kind enough to share your biographies, short biographic summaries that were written. And I first just wanted to say how honored I am to be asked to talk with you. When I shared with my dad, who I came to visit, that's why I'm here, about you all, he said, well, why don't you just let them talk? Why are you talking? And I do look forward, I would love to hear more of your stories because your experience, the wisdom, and your own leadership is really impressive. So I'm honored to be able to share my story with you. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit, where I'm coming from, and then Hawaii, and that is where the Iswa Center is, where I work, and why that is in Hawaii, and the work that we're doing, which is with Asia and Asia Pacific, and connecting America with Asia. But I was born in Columbia, Missouri, but I moved here when I was 5 years old. My dad took a position as dean of the business school at the University of Tulsa. So we moved here in the early 80s, and that's why I was fortunate enough to be raised here, and then also went to the University of Tulsa. I'm a product of Tulsa Public Schools and went to Memorial High School. And at TU studied sociology and political science and women's studies there. After I graduated, I did something called, oh, no, I knew I was forgetting something. So before I tell more about myself, I'd love to hear, or just by a show of hands, it would be nice to know in the room, how many of you have been to Hawaii? Yeah, that's what I thought. Good. Actually, a vast majority. Great. And how many of you, it seems like a lot from the biographies, have spent time outside of the U.S., internationally, either for work or, yeah.
You mean travel or living?
Either travel or living. Yeah, I think, okay, that's really impressive. So I think I'll just be sharing my perspective of Hawaii, but you have your own experiences there as well. So maybe just some things from my perspective. After I had graduated from University of Tulsa, I did something called AmeriCorps. I don't know if it sounds like people are familiar. It's basically domestic Peace Corps. And it's a one-year service you do for your country here in the U.S. in some type of service role. And I was able to work at the University of Colorado at a place called the Service Learning Program. And I stayed on in Boulder, Colorado. And essentially, it's how we can help incorporate service into our universities so that our college students are doing more service in the community. And we find it's the best way to learn is to actually do and serve the community. After that, I did do, as Sherry had mentioned, did my master's degree at the University of Amsterdam. That was right after I married Lance Boyd and moved there for a couple of years to do that. And there I really focused on the students from Asia who were studying and their experiences. So this is what got me really interested in the exchange between Asia and the West, and how people were learning and traveling and studying across boundaries, and how it was kind of creating new ideas. And I found it really exciting to a lot of my friends that I met from Asia, and that got me started down the path of wanting to do more work with cultural and international exchange. And I will say honestly, something that had a big impact on me was when the Twin Towers were hit in 9/11. I don't like to make stories based on negative experience, but I have to say when I watched that, it gave me a very, very strong motivation early in my career that I didn't want to see more things like that happen. And I think for those of you who have experienced conflicts or wars, or your partners or you were in service to our country, I think that same feeling of how can we make friends with people before we're at war with them. And I think that spirit really motivated me to do the work that I do, that how can we reach out across boundaries so that we know and understand, and we have fun together and we share food together. And when you have all those family connections with people, hopefully it would prevent further conflict. So that's just to share kind of the deep motivations early in my life that had an impact on what I chose to do eventually. Then about 10 years ago is when I moved to Hawaii. It was after I finished graduate school. And that gave me I have to be honest here. I had chosen to move to Colorado, and Lance had followed me there. Then I decided I wanted to go to graduate school in Amsterdam, and he had followed me there. But by the next move, he said, "I'm tired of you picking cold places. We're going to move somewhere warm." And I figured that since I picked two, it was his turn to pick. So I did let him, and he did pick Hawaii. And I would like to say that there were very profound and important reasons, but I have to admit a great deal was for the weather is why he picked. And we were at a period in our lives where we had the freedom to choose that, fortunately. And so we moved there. And I thought that sounds like a great place for a vacation, but what do you do there? Is there really real people doing work, and how do you even afford to live there, which we're still trying to figure out because it's very expensive. But once we got there, I tried to look for any organization that was really focused on this thing that I had got passionate about the different cultures getting together and having experiences, exchanging information. And I found a wonderful place called East-West Center, and the long name of it, the official name, is the Center for Cultural and Technical Exchange between East and West. And it was established in 1960 by the U.S. Congress. And Lyndon B. Johnson was the one who actually signed it into being. And it's been there ever since, and it very much was established after World War II with the idea of how can we better understand and exchange cultural and technical information with Asia so that we can make these connections. And it's been doing that ever since. It's the reason it's in Hawaii, and I'd like to touch on this because a lot of times when people say, when I say I work in Hawaii, they kind of laugh at me like, "Oh, sure you work in Hawaii."
On the beach.
Yeah, on the beach, yeah. But it was put there on purpose, and if some of you may know who have flown there, it's really far. It's just as far from Hawaii to Tokyo as Chicago. It's actually the same distance. So it's very much close to Asia, and it has a lot of roots in Asia. So in the early years with the sugar and pineapple plantations, if you've been there, you know this, people look Asian, and that's because all those immigrants moved from Korea and Philippines and China and Japan especially, and they settled there. So actually, faces like mine, so whites, Caucasians are a minority, and that there's more Asians that have mixed with the Hawaiians, and so it really is culturally and physically partly Asian, more than any other state, has an Asian influence in it. Another reason it's put there, and I think those of you who have been there we say the aloha spirit part about it. And it's not just hokey for tourists, but really a sense that we borrow from the native Hawaiians about a really deep sense of hospitality, bringing people in and that it's your home. And so when people come to Hawaii from when we do our work, they fly in from all over the world, different countries, and they all fly to Hawaii. But they really have a sense of welcomeness. They feel that they can be there, that they're comfortable, not just because it's beautiful, but because people welcome them. So I think Congress might not have really fully understood that, but I think Hawaii is a really wonderful place for people to come together, kind of put down their arguments, even if in their own countries they would be at each other's throats. They tend to kind of relax, put that aside, the slow pace of life. I think it creates an environment, kind of like a retreat, where they feel they can be more human and let their guards down a little bit. And we find that really true in our work. So these aspects of Hawaii are important for us and our work, and we're appreciative of that, of borrowing from the native culture for that. Another really important part for us is what we learn from the Hawaiians about using nature as a teacher. So again, those of you who've been there maybe know that the Hawaiians feel that their myths, their legends are that their god and goddess of heaven and earth had a baby, and that baby was stillborn. It was dead when it was born. And so they buried the baby, and out of that very place grew a taro plant, which is kind of like a sweet potato plant. It's the staple crop of the Native Americans, like their corn or wheat to us. And that baby grew, and that was the first child. And then when they had another baby, it was a human baby. So Hawaiians have always said that if you take care of your older brother, which is nature or land or this taro root, he will take care of you, meaning he will feed you. You'll always have food if you bring the taro plant. So there's a really deep connection. So when we say ohana, you may have heard that. It means family. It's translated as family in Native Hawaiian. They actually mean nature as well. So they mean the birds and the plants and everything when they say ohana. It's kind of a deep sense of family that includes all species. So when we do our work in environment, which I'll talk a little bit about, we really pull from that. Like we're talking about a really deep sense. And then as you know, being a beautiful place, you have a sense that you want it to exist. The sea turtles and the beautiful beach, you have a sense of wanting to protect it as well. So I mention these things because I think it makes Hawaii more of a tourist destination. Those are the things it's based on. That's why people want to come there. But I think these deeper cultural and environmental values that are there have really shaped the work at the East-West Center. I'm impressed you all are. After lunch, you're so alert. I know that's hard. That's a hard gig. So I just wanted to return to East-West Center and share a little bit about the work that we do there. So the mission of the East-West Center is to create a peaceful, prosperous, and just Asia-Pacific community. That includes the U.S. When they say Pacific, they're meaning all the countries that border the Pacific Ocean. So that even includes some South American countries. So how this can be a community around the Pacific. Some people say, if you're familiar with the idea of the Pacific Century, that this may be the Pacific Century, that through colonization, and it's what we know of when America was started, that century was the Atlantic century. So really the power being in Europe and America, and that being the source of things in the last century. But as we move into this, we're seeing, fortunately, U.S. still being a part of that, more moving towards Asia and maybe China gaining more influence. So the idea of the Pacific century. So excitingly for Hawaii, it's basically the belly button of the Pacific. I mean, it is just right there, or pi'iokoi as we say in Hawaii. So it's right there in the middle. So it's a wonderful place to help, observe, watch this Pacific century gain traction and make sure that those are happy developments. Sometimes people are scared of that shifting power, and that's understandable, but I think it's a matter of how we look at it, and we're still part of that story. America's very strongly part of still the major player in the Pacific. We have about 55,000 alumni from the East-West Center across the globe, and many now are prime ministers or presidents of their country. Many of them have gone on to important roles in the ministries of their government. Both in the U.S., a lot of our senators and representatives have had some experience at the East-West Center, but especially in Asia, all the way over to India or the Middle East as well. So when we say Asia, we go by the State Department or the U.S. government definition. It goes all the way to Iran, actually. So it's a big part of the world when we talk about Asia. Some people have thought that the East-West Center in the basement was where the CIA was for the Cold War. So there's still kind of some mystery around. Actually, there is no basement unless they buried it. I've been looking for it. I don't actually think there were operatives there, but it was it always has been an important place for diplomats and government officials to come through, especially when the flights couldn't get all the way to Asia. So we actually lost a little bit of authority once airplanes had the ability to fly all the way from California all the way to Asia, because before, just like those of you who traveled and know, it had to stop. The planes couldn't go that far. So everyone had to come to Hawaii at that point. But now we still have a lot of people come through. We've been really lucky we were lucky to host Hillary Clinton when she was the Secretary of State 2 times. And I think a big part of that is because President Obama's parents met at the East-West Center. They were both studying there, doing their degrees. So they met. He was raised in Hawaii, you may remember. Still has a really strong attachment. So he's come to visit, kind of to remember when he was little and ran around in the gardens. So when he visits, it's nice because it's kind of a personal connection that he has, and it's fun for us as well to have that connection with him. At the East-West Center, we do 3 things. It's a think tank, so it's a research hub for issues on Asia Pacific, governance issues, environment issues. We're doing all that. And then we also do seminars, so diplomats or journalists, they'll all kind of come and gather, as I told you, for a week and do something important. But the part I work with is leadership programs, particularly for undergraduate through professionals. So basically this means for our Asia Pacific leadership program that I work with, people come to Hawaii. It's a 9-month program, and all sorts of people enter our program. And during this 9 months, they spend 5 months with us in Hawaii. Some of the people we've had in the past have been monks from Bhutan, or an Iranian businessman, or an Indian police chief, or a human rights activist from Myanmar, previously Burma. And they all come for a leadership program, and they live in Hawaii, and they study with us, and we help them just figure out, what is your personal mission? Before you start telling other people, before you start leading others, be sure that you know and can lead yourself. Because as we all know, we don't need dictators. We don't need to repeat World War II. Leadership isn't always used well. So we want people to really spend time reflecting on their values and the ethical nature of the leadership they're developing, and do it together in a place where, from India, from Pakistan, again, where normally they would be warring, they're coming to our program to really look at how can we lead this region together in an ethical way and a peaceful way. And when they come together, they figure this out, and they have long enough away from home that it's a good space for them to work out some of these issues when they're with us. The second and only other program we wanted to share is one that my husband and I run together, and it's an environmental institute for undergraduates. So these are 20, 21-year-old students, and they come from all over Southeast Asia, and more recently from Turkey, Russia, Brazil, and China and Japan. And in groups of 20, they come to the U.S. for 5 weeks. And as I always tell American taxpayers, I want to start by saying thank you, because this is the program that our State Department runs It's basically our soft diplomacy. How can young people who will be leaders when they grow up, how can they come to the U.S., learn about the U.S., make friends with Americans, so that as they age, it doesn't mean that they'll love everything about America, but they'll understand it and be able to make better decisions. So we're really fortunate to work with these young people for 5 weeks, and we spend 3 weeks in Hawaii with them. We take them 1 week to Colorado and 1 week to Washington, D.C. So they really get to learn the diversity of America, geographic as well as cultural. And they're so shocked when they see how diverse America is, both the people, the faces, as well as the geography. So that's really a treat, and I always feel, especially once we get to D.C., a lot of pride for what I get to show them and for the U.S. when we're able to do that. How am I doing on time, Sherry? I think I'm about done.
You're about done. But
Yeah, okay.
one thing I want you to do is share.
Yeah.
Because
Let me turn this on.
because Christina is a friend, I reap the benefits. So I want to show you just a couple of the things that she has given to me from countries. This one, as you can tell, is from Vietnam. This,
Okay.
all right. You're going to have to help me with these, Christina.
Oh, okay.
I think Russian.
Yeah.
I got it right.
Beautiful.
Isn't this beautiful?
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of funny. It's one side. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is from Russia.
Okay.
And then this one,
That's gorgeous.
help me with this.
Malaysia.
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 Yeah.
Those are pretty.
Thanks, Sherry. It's good to bring props. Good job.
Aren't those?
You read it?
No, just gifts from my some gifts from my students, and then some things when I go there I can pick up for Sherry. Now that I know she likes scarves, so. Maybe I'll just open up for if there's any questions. I did just want to say one last comment, and that's coming back to the theme of a story. So that's just my short story. But what I so have appreciated is the story of how similar we are. So when I moved from Oklahoma to Hawaii, seeing so many similarities, and now as I travel around to Asia, so many similarities, and just of that person-to-person connection. So that the work you do in Silver Service, that helping individuals, that's not just touching this part. I mean, if you knew how many thousands of people I met like you in countries helping people in their area, I see you're so similar. You know, you're part of that same story, and it's a really powerful one. And I so have benefited from the hard work, the family values, and the things that I learned here in this part of the world growing up here, and how similar it is to what I see in rural Vietnam or rural Malaysia that care for each other and that care for families. So thanks. And any questions, welcome. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.